Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. What's going on, bro?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Do you know what? Yesterday, I spent about 4 hours reorganizing my Google Calendar, and it
That
just
sounds
felt
exciting.
incredible. It did. It's created so much space. So much space. Because obviously, as organizations evolve, roles evolve, right?
Yep.
Although your roles just kind of stayed the same, but my role just tends to evolve. Yeah, you laugh. So obviously with that comes a different mode of operating, right? So for the past few weeks, I've felt a bit, don't know, just inconsistent, and I've felt myself falling victim to my mindset a little bit. Different to where I'm usually at, right? Be more reactive to it, getting sucked into thoughts and things versus being able to just see them and, just be separate to them. So yeah, yesterday I spent some time doing that, and I just feel so great. I can see in my week how the different things will play out, and I've got just keystone habits in there and other things, and meetings and meeting agendas are in place. So I can just see when I look at my week how all my bases are covered. We're still having a lot of space within the days to be able to then address the certain different things that come up. So yeah, I was excited to share that with you. I thought I'll share it with him when I speak with him today. So yeah, I'm sharing it with you as I speak with you today.
Awesome. Well, normally before we get these recordings done, you and I go back and forth for about 30, 45 minutes. And today we jumped right on it with a quick aside, but getting to it. One of the things that was interesting today, Tim, which I want to talk about because I think it's relevant to our guys, is I was reading a news story last night. And because of, we're looking at with COVID, we're still, a lot of people in the world are on lockdown or semi-lockdown. I know you in the UK, there's things starting to open up, hopefully, over there, but a little bit here and there. In Saudi Arabia, the divorce rate has gone up by 30%. Think of that. 3 out of 10 marriages, more than normal in a very conservative country, have gone up. Now, the reason that this article was stating that this has happened is because a lot of the men who have been having extramarital affairs have been caught. They've been trying to sneak around still, and they've been caught. So now, obviously, 30%, we'll see how many more have been caught. Who knows? There's some cultural implications, of course, and going on there. But what gets curious to me is besides cultural ramifications, why is it that men seek solace outside the relationship?
Significance, I'd say. Going to this woman who doesn't know anything really about you apart from what you portray, and it's kind of like when you first got with the woman you're with, right? You feel like a king. You feel like she admires you. You feel like she respects you. There's there's no mud on the glass, right? So it's just easy to get those significance and connection.
So let's talk about the mud on the glass, because this is something that you and I both know about, but guys listening might not know. So the idea between mud on the glass is that you and your partner, there's a glass wall in front of you guys. So between you, I should say. And it's clear glass when you first start dating, theoretically. And over time, as resentment builds, as insults fly, or whatever happens, a little bit of dirt or mud gets put on that glass, just little speckles. But of course, over time, those speckles build up unless you clean the glass and you really do some, like the clean slate method, for example, that we talk about. Unless you're doing that, this mud starts to build and you can't see each other anymore. Or the image of each other is so blurred and dirty, you can't see the person clearly enough as they go through. So, that's the idea what we're talking about here when we talk about, the glass is dirty, so to speak, or what you're saying. And then do you think, obviously for significance, these guys are going outside of the relationship. Why do you think it is that men in general, let's just talk about guys coming through our program or guys listening to this. Why is it, do you think, that guys are in a state in their relationship, their marriage, and instead of exiting the marriage, they seek the comfort of a woman outside of it. Not just sex, that's one thing for sure, but for guys that actually get into long-term relationships outside of their marriage.
Versus just, exiting the marriage.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess my question is, for you, and I have my opinion as well, but I think this would be relevant to the audience. So guys that, it's not just on a road trip or a business trip, have sex with a girl at the hotel bar, but got men that have long-term relationships, let's say a year plus, with another woman while still staying married.
And the question is, why don't they just end the marriage?
Yeah. Or why do you think they do that?
Oh, why do you think they do that? So in terms of why not ending the marriage, I mean, it can be multifaceted, right? Financial implications of giving half the business up, or childcare implications, or there's tons of implications there that kind of, can, that at least I hear the guys say. I spoke with a guy last week who said, Tim, if things don't change, we're going to get divorced, and that will ruin me financially. Everything that I've worked hard for the past 20 years, I plan on retiring in the next 10. That plan will change. So there's major implications there, along with obviously kids and holiday seasons and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of why they then seek it outside, when I used to do it, and I wasn't married, I mean, I was in committed relationships. When I used to do it, it came from a place of inadequacy. I did it in order to, because I'd then go after the girls that, not go after, well, yeah, I guess I would, that a lot of the guys wanted, right? And, the guys knew that I had a part, even the girls knew that I had a girlfriend, not all of them, but most of them. And I did it from a place of insecurity, wanting to prove that I could, wanting to be the man and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I got excitement from the chase. It was definitely exciting. It didn't feel good. That excitement came with a lot of guilt and shame. But underneath that, back then, and I didn't realize it at the time, but the biggest piece of it was just a feeling of inadequacy that I was trying to fill. And I think it's true for the guys that come to us that are doing the same. These guys go out there and, they thought that the way to be able to come home on an evening and walk through the door and have the wife just admire them and respect them was dependent on how much money they made. But it isn't, right? It's got something to do with it, but it's definitely not the first and foremost piece that a woman requires in order to look at her man in that way. So I think for these guys, as they go out there and the alpha in business and they slaying the dragon every day, and they come home and they end up kind of being this submissive guy at home for the most part because they're drained, which then turns the woman off. And as this then happens day after day, week after week, year after year, and the sex just starts to go down and becomes less and less frequent, and obviously sex is a big piece of where men feel connected and loved, right? Through sex and physical touch. That's typically men's primary modes of feeling loved. So as that starts to go down, they're in this relationship where they feel like they are doing everything to provide. They don't understand why there's arguments and there's no sex, and they almost feel very alone. They feel isolated in this relationship. And I know women, it's ironic because women feel the same, right? Women, I think both men and women go outside of the marriage for the same reasons, for that feeling of connection and security. So yeah, then, they continue having this relationship with this woman for a year outside of the marriage, and they're getting those needs met, right? Because, there's a lot of things that don't get brought into that relationship that make it much easier to be able to get those feelings of admiration and respect and closeness, and obviously sex, because it's all new again, right? So even from the chemicals in the brain to, everything that creates that newness and that connection and that excitement. But it's all, it reminds me of a guy that was on his fifth marriage when he applied for the program. And every time he got to a certain point in the relationship that he never could get beyond, at which point he'd exit and go to the next one. And he spent like $1 million on divorces until he realized, oh, wait, I think it's me. I think there's a point at which I reach where I just stop and basically escape, because I don't want to face what is in front of me. So yeah, a bit long-winded, but that's what I'd say.
No, it's all good. I think also for the guys that, that go into the long-term relationships, they're obviously getting needs met otherwise, right? So, this is where it becomes different to me from the guys that I've worked with through the Powerful Man, and just guys I know, business owners, that end up having a long-term affair is, there's something within that other relationship that they're not getting from their partner. And what I typically hear from guys is, oh, my wife and I have turned into roommates, right? They get out of bed, they don't want to talk, they might take care of the kids, and they can't wait to get out of the house. Like they're just like, oh, can't wait to get out of the house. And that's where the excitement and the newness and the freshness is they discover this new relationship and their needs are being met in different ways from this other woman, right? So there's other things that she's providing. And, as guys go through the program, as you said, a lot of times guys realize like, oh, wait, there's a common denominator here. It's me. And I think it becomes easy to create a story about our partner, about what she's doing or not doing, right? Without actually taking the effort to get to know her again. And that's what common thread that I see. And I was going through a text message back and forth with one of the guys that's in the program right now this morning. And one of the things that's really interesting is we forget that our partner has changed, right? We change over time, right? Guys listening to the show, obviously you're into, personal and business development. You're on a quest to be a better man. What's to say that your wife isn't on a similar quest or doing something different, right? What is she reading? What is she listening to? What is she talking to her friends about? Is it the same things that she was doing 5 years ago? And my hope for you men listening to this is that you're not doing the same thing you were doing 5 years ago. Exactly. Right. Your tastes have probably changed. Your taste in music may have changed, shows, programs, things you're reading, business. You've become a different man and you've grown apart because you and your partner may not have shared those things. And so it becomes easy, as you were saying, Tim, as you meet somebody else, you kind of come with a fresh slate, so to speak, or a mask, and you can pretend or showcase who you are now without the fear of being this new evolved man in a new role and trying to explain to your partner, hey, I've changed, I'm putting my foot down or something else. So I think it becomes the path of least resistance. And that's why a lot of guys, have this situation.
Yeah, I was going to say it's much easier to not deal with the current relationship, isn't it? It's just much easier to enter into a new relationship where a lot of things are taken care of almost automatically, effortlessly without you having to think about them. But the great thing is, that can also be true of a relationship, your marriage. If you once you do the work to understand one another a little bit more, for sure, like you were saying, because both people do change for sure, and both people are often seeking the same thing, in slightly different ways usually. And when you understand what's going on, then you're able to create a space where both of you feel emotionally seen and heard, and you are willing, like for example, as you know, Amelia and I are on another 30-day of no sex challenge, which is great fun. And the idea of it is that we also have been asked to spend 15 minutes every day naked with one another in bed. So, the point of that is, in previously, when we've been asked to do this, it's like, well, I just don't feel like Amelia wants to do it, for whatever reason. She's like, well, I don't want it to feel like it has to lead to sex, but she has her reasons, I have mine. So anyway, the point of it is that it's not about whether what I think about Amelia, whether she'll show up or not. All that I can do is be committed to the relationship by showing up on time, in bed, naked for that 15 minutes. And whether she chooses to be there or not, that's her choice, right? And it's kind of the same thing with the long-term relationship. All you can do is play your side. And if you know that you're doing your best to lean in and get to know your wife and deepen the relationship and be vulnerable with your own needs as well, because it does take a level of vulnerability, and continue to invest in yourself as a man, that's a big piece of this. Hence, the live as a king system, right? A one of the biggest shifts that we see for the men is when they start being the alpha at home as well. That doesn't mean they start beating the chest and being a tyrant. They just really start leading themselves and they become attractive and desirable again. So yeah, you can only do your side, right? Maybe the wife doesn't want to do that, but unless you're fully playing your role and doing it fully, and unless you do the work, you're just going to repeat the pattern. Even in this new relationship, right? Gets to a year in, probably 6 months in, you're going to start noticing the cracks. You're going to start seeing things, at which point you've then got 2 relationships with cracks in, twice the stress, and then you've got the fear and the fear really of, holy shit, I hope this doesn't come out. Then having to apologize to everybody and all the rest of it. It's much easier in the first instance to just, do the work.
So let's talk to a couple of the guys that might be on the verge, right? I know there's a couple of guys listening to this right now. As a gentleman I was texting this morning who's kind of like, hey, I got 1 foot out the door, right? And 1 foot almost creeping into that other door of the other woman. So what are some things, let's go back and forth and exchange a couple ideas so we can leave the guys with some action items. What are a couple things, maybe 2 or 3, that these guys can do right now, Tim, to, kind of reignite that relationship they have with their spouse?
Well, I'm just going to obviously say go through the tools in the system, right? Because they work. So the first thing is that live as a king system, which really in essence is about these guys starting to take ownership for themselves. So they have something left when they walk through the door in an evening. And they're starting to fill their cup again, realizing their desires and having time for themselves and dressing well and looking good and investing in their health and just being the guy that the wife married. Do it for themselves, if not, for the marriage. And the second thing would be to create a space where your wife can empty her basket, like we talked about, right, in the hidden motives technique. You walking through the door, the last thing you want to do is probably talk to your wife about her day. But if she wants to unload her day onto you, that's a good sign. Receive it and just go through that process that we've spoken about previously to invite her to further continue emptying that basket, because you're going to invite her further into her feminine. And if you're doing the first step, you'll be further in your masculine, which is going to create polarity. And then the third step at that point, you really have the opportunity to then start doing some more tactical things, I would say, around intimacy, whether it's going on date nights, whether it's, that's maybe a bit far away from where these guys are with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But I'll take it a step back then. Understand what it is you're seeking as well by looking outside the relationship. I'll put that as a third step. Understand what you're trying to seek from looking outside the relationship. What are the frustrations that you have in the relationship? And, do point 1 and point 2 first and see if those frustrations are still there. And if they are, look at what the frustrations are that you're having, because with every frustration, usually underneath that, there's a need that isn't being met. And then you can start to look at what need is it. And just do this for yourself for now. Maybe even invite your wife to do it as well. Maybe then do it together and share. Do it smartly, because that could go one of 2 ways. But, do it smartly so you guys can share. But, yeah, I think if you did those 3 steps, you'd have a lot more closeness and clarity with the relationship.
And I mean, they're great things. And guys, there's a couple of things you can do to be proactive too, right? Because again, when we boil it down for some of the guys, not all of them, and this takes a lot of work to get there and go into the process, as couples grow apart, you just forget that the person across from you isn't the same person that they were 5 years ago, right? But we just haven't had a chance to reconnect because we have these old stories. So a couple other practical things you could do right away. And Tim, you pointed out, like, clean up your side of the street first. But something I do on a regular basis is I find out what books my wife is reading, and I try to read through them, right? Some of them aren't interesting to me at all, but maybe I'll read the summary. I'll read a little bits and pieces of it, because that gives me a clue as to what she's interested in, right? And what I know the books that I'm listening to affect me and influence me and my thoughts, and it also shows my pattern. So I'll do the same thing with my wife. I'll find out what she's interested in. Right now, it's all autobiographies of powerful women, which is kind of cool. Before that was toddler sleep, which I tell you what, I skipped through that. But you want to figure out what's going on and what are those changes. And then another thing that I think is really great, and this is something I got from you a couple of years ago, Tim, is sit down with your wife and just have a conversation at night of, what are the wins? What are the losses? How was her day? And going through that. And then lastly, ask her what a love tank is. And it's a weird question, I know, but the idea behind it is on a scale of 1 to 10, how full is your love tank? How full is your feeling of love? Now, it doesn't have to be love for me, right? Or you in this case, but it can be love in general, love from the kids, what have you. This will give you a barometer of where your wife's at. She might say, I'm a 9. That's phenomenal. But she might also say, I'm a 2, right? I'm at the end of my rope and you didn't know. So it's a great way to start conversations and just doing a little check-in. In business, we check in with our KPIs or key performance indicators or, other metrics that we're utilizing for our business. Where are we in business? Where's that road? How are sales doing? What's operations doing, et cetera? Or OKRs, whatever it may be for you and your business. But you want to make sure you're doing that in your important relationships, right? Your kids, your spouse, right? Is what we're talking about now. So I think these are really good ways of reigniting and seeing where that person is, what their interests are, what their passions are. Because especially guys with kids, it's easy to get lost in the day to day of you take the kids, you take them to soccer practice, you take them to school, you make lunches, et cetera, and you almost become like business associates and roommates rather than lovers. So you want to make sure you're obviously reigniting that relationship.
It's interesting. Amelia and I are having a conversation the other day. I posted this in the Brotherhood today, in fact. I don't know if you saw it. But we were talking about the future, and neither of us really enjoy cooking a great deal. I mean, I feel like it's something I could get into. And if my meals were prepared for me, I'd definitely not miss cooking, put it that way. So anyway, point being is we were talking about the idea of, well, how much would it cost to, have your meals prepared for you? Not just like, these meal prep services, but, properly. Anyway, I came across this job position for this woman who was a cook, had nutrition qualifications and things, would do all the food shopping, was a house manager, was also a nanny. And I worked it out. I was like, okay, well, how much time do I spend each week making sure bills are paid, doing food shopping, cooking meals? How many conversations do Amelia and I have about, when can I go walk the dogs? When can I do this? Because, we have dogs that are reactive, so they take looking after like in a different way than, just non-reactive dogs do, put it that way. So point being is, I figured it was about 10 hours per week. And not counting the mental load of everything else as well that can then have a toll, right? And I calculated that if I could pay that person, if that person was like £50 an hour, let's say, £500 a week, £2,000 a month, then that would be a worthwhile investment just to get them to do those few things for that amount of time in the week. And then we started to just think about the possibilities of when we have kids and just being able to wake up and then actually exercise together without one of us doing it, one of us not, because we had childcare, and then even being able to get a shower, right? Other little bits and pieces. And I think this particular job position for this particular one was about $3,000 a month. And I just thought, wow, what a great investment that could be. For that $3,000 a month, if that was to free up so much space between Amelia and I, or you and your partner, to be able to then focus so much more of your attention on doing the things that you both really enjoy, either with the kids or with one another. I mean, imagine the difference that could have on a relationship. This whole conversation of straying outside the relationship, I think, would probably be the instance of it or inclination of it for some men would probably go down. The possibility of divorce, I imagine, would go down. $3,000 a month, if someone does get divorced, they're probably going to be paying more than that anyway, in child support and other bits and pieces and all the rest of it. So I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but when you said about roles there, I think having something like that in place really helps solidify particular, not roles, but remembering the purpose of the relationship, right? Making sure the relationship remains a sacred space rather than the relationship becoming a roommate situation, and not getting any attention because the attention's going elsewhere and you're too drained to give it any. But anyway, just a musing of her and I's the other night. That was before the sex ban came in, by the way.
Yep. Also spoken from a guy who doesn't have kids.
Very true. Very true.
I think some of the guys listening to this are like, all right, buddy, it sounds awesome. And it does sound awesome.
But what would be the biggest hesitation though? Seriously, I'm curious.
Well, let's take this. We'll take this to another conversation because it doesn't relate to this topic today. But guys, hopefully, the message here is really looking at, what your reasonings are in your side of the street, and how things are actually being cleaned up or not being cleaned up, and what to do. And if you really are interested in, reigniting your relationship and reigniting that passion, go ahead and grab our Reignite cheat sheet. It's a free resource we have for men coming through. Just go to thepowerfulman.com/bonus. That's thepowerfulman.com/bonus and grab the Reignite cheat sheet because it's really applicable to what we're talking about today. If you haven't seen that already, it's something that could really change your relationship. All right, gentlemen, that's it for us today on another episode of The Powerful Man Show, and we'll see you next time.